Have you ever noticed that you're constantly talking to yourself? This endless internal dialogue isn't just random thoughts, it's a prison you've created for yourself. But what if I told you that true awakening happens the moment you stop feeding this dialogue? In this video, I'm going to show you exactly what happens when you silence that voice. The profound change that occurs in your perception, the power that arises from silence, and how your reality is completely transformed. Get ready to discover what lies beyond this constant mental chatter and how to access a state of clarity and power that has always been within you. Let's get started. The illusion of identity and the inner voice. The voice that echoes in your mind is a construct, a reflection of the experiences, fears, and insecurities you have accumulated throughout your life. Since childhood, we are conditioned to believe that our thoughts are the essence of who we are. This belief is reinforced by a society that values self-analysis and constant reflection. Do you recognize this toxic internal dialogue? You'll never make it. What will others think? You're not good enough. These phrases aren't yours. They're echoes of voices from the past. In childhood, this voice begins as a reflection of authority figures. In adolescence, it turns into a ruthless critic, mirroring social pressure. In adulthood, it becomes an internal judge that is never satisfied. Neuroscience reveals something fascinating. When we identify with these thoughts, the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for identity, merges with the fear circuits in the amygdala, creating a neural loop that reinforces this false identity. Our family and culture strengthen this process. From an early age, we learn to internally repeat the judgments, expectations, and fears we absorb from the environment. However, this incessant mental activity can become a trap, creating a false identity that traps us in cycles of self-criticism and self-doubt. When you identify with this voice, you lose connection with your true essence, which is much deeper and more stable. The practice of observing your thoughts, rather than engaging with them, allows you to start dismantling this illusory identity. In doing so, you begin to realize that true freedom lies not in silencing the mind, but in recognizing that you are not the voice that speaks incessantly. That voice is just an echo of your past experiences, not your truth. By distancing yourself from this identification, you make room for a new perception of yourself, one that is more authentic and connected to the present. How your thoughts destroy your opportunities. Incessant mental chatter not only distorts your perception of yourself, but also influences the way you interact with the world around you. When your mind is full of noise, you tend to see life through a lens of judgment and comparison. Notice how this affects your daily decisions. You fail to speak up in a meeting because of the "they'll think I'm stupid" dialogue. You avoid social gatherings thinking, "I won't fit in." Or you give up on opportunities before you even try because of "I can't do it." Your body responds to every negative thought. Your shoulders tense, your breathing becomes shallow, your stomach tightens. It's your nervous system reacting to threats that exist only in your mind. Different cultures deal with this phenomenon in fascinating ways. While the West normalizes constant internal dialogue as reflection, Eastern traditions have recognized it for millennia as monkey mind, an agitated state that needs to be calmed down. Zen monks call it passing clouds, emphasizing its temporary nature. The practice of mindfulness offers specific tools for observing this process. The technique of labeling thoughts helps to create distance from the mental narrative, while body scanning reveals where we hold the tension of this constant dialogue. The breathing anchor exercise provides a point of return when we get lost in our thoughts. When you do this, you discover that life is full of beauty and opportunities, regardless of the stories your mind tries to tell you. This change of perspective allows you to live with more authenticity and joy, freeing yourself from the chains of comparison and judgment. What happens in your brain? when you don't stop thinking. Your brain is a constant creation machine, generating up to 60,000 thoughts a day. But the most fascinating thing is how it creates this seemingly endless dialogue. In the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for language and self-awareness, neural patterns are activated repeatedly, creating a loop of thoughts that feeds back on itself. It's like an internal DJ who insists on playing the same songs over and over again. Scientists have discovered that traumas and intense experiences are recorded in the amygdala, the emotional center of the brain, creating thought patterns that are repeated as a protective mechanism. That's why you keep reliving old conversations or rehearsing future ones. Your brain is trying to protect you, even if it's no longer necessary. Your nervous system responds to this constant dialogue as if it were a real threat, releasing cortisol and adrenaline, keeping you in a permanent state of alert. The same neural networks that are activated during a real experience are stimulated when you just think about it, creating a vicious cycle of stress and anxiety. The neuroplasticity of the brain means that the more you engage in this internal dialogue, the stronger these connections become, making the pattern increasingly automatic and difficult to interrupt. It's like a path in the forest. The more you walk it, the more defined it becomes. The biggest mental traps that stop you from growing. The mind is deeply afraid of silence, and for a surprising reason. The ego sees silence as a threat to its very existence. Like a paranoid manager, it will create endless distractions and justifications to keep the internal dialogue going. One of the most common traps is trying to force silence. The more you try to silence your thoughts, the more they seem to shout. Another subtle trap is to turn the search for silence into yet another ego goal, creating a new cycle of thoughts about not thinking. The ego is cunning. It can even use spiritual teachings as a way of keeping the dialogue going, turning the practice into yet another reason for self-criticism. When you approach true silence, fear can arise as a feeling of losing control or dying. It's at this point that many people retreat, returning to the familiar comfort of mental noise. The key is not to fight these resistances, but to observe them with curiosity. It's like sitting on the edge of a troubled lake. The less you interfere, the more naturally the water calms down. Mental silence. Your secret weapon against stress. Silence is not the absence of sound, but a state of full presence. When you allow yourself to experience moments of silence, you begin to realize the depth of life that is often overshadowed by mental noise. The state of presence is like diving into an ocean of clarity. Your senses sharpen, colors seem more vivid, sounds clearer, and every sensation becomes a new discovery. There are different layers of silence to explore. Mental silence is the cessation of internal dialogue, where thoughts lose their compulsiveness. Emotional silence is a state of deep peace, where emotional reactions don't dominate your experience. Physical silence manifests as deep relaxation in the body, where chronic tensions finally dissolve. The benefits are tangible and immediate. Your blood pressure normalizes, cortisol levels drop, digestion improves, and even your immune system strengthens. Research shows that people who regularly cultivate mental silence have a better memory, increased creativity, and a greater ability to make intuitive decisions. To experience this state, start with the conscious pause exercise. 3 times a day, stop for 30 seconds and simply observe the sounds, the sensations, your breathing. The space between thoughts technique is another gateway. As you talk to yourself, try to notice the small gaps between your thoughts. These moments of gap are glimpses of true silence. When you connect with this presence, you discover that life is much more than the narratives you tell yourself. It's a continuous flow of experiences, emotions, and connections that unfold in the present moment. This realization brings a sense of peace and clarity, allowing you to live with more intention and purpose. The magical moment where everything changes. The shift happens like a flash of clarity, a precise instant where the internal dialogue simply stops. It's like waking up from a dream while you're still awake. At that precise moment, you experience extraordinary clarity, as if a mental fog had instantly dissipated. Physically, your body responds with subtle but profound signals. Your breathing becomes deeper and more natural. Your shoulders relax, and you can feel an unusual lightness in your chest. In the brain, a dramatic change occurs. The beta waves associated with active thinking give way to alpha and theta waves, creating a state of expanded consciousness similar to that experienced by advanced meditators. The most fascinating thing is how the perception of time changes at this point. The eternal dialogue about past and future ceases, and you experience what mystics call the eternal moment, where time seems to simultaneously stop and expand. It's as if you were experiencing reality in high definition for the first time, with a sharpness that makes every moment infinitely richer and more meaningful. Your perception expands, and you notice details that have always been there but were obscured by the constant mental noise. The scientific impact of mental silence on your body. The impact of mental silence on the body is profound and measurable. When internal dialogue ceases, a cascade of biological changes begins. Levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, drop dramatically, while the production of serotonin and dopamine naturally increases. Neuroscientific studies reveal that just 10 minutes of true mental silence can increase the production of brain cells in the hippocampus, the area responsible for memory and learning. The immune system also responds. Reducing internal dialogue decreases chronic inflammation in the body, a key factor in many modern diseases. DNA responds to silence by activating genes related to longevity and deactivating those linked to premature aging. The parasympathetic nervous system, responsible for rest and digestion, is activated, allowing the body to enter a natural state of self-healing. Blood pressure normalizes, heart rate stabilizes, and even the intestinal microbiota, our second brain, shows positive changes when the stress of constant dialogue ceases. The secret power of observing your own thoughts. Awareness is the key to personal transformation. When you become aware of the thought patterns that keep you stuck, you can begin to challenge them. This awareness is not a process of struggle, but of acceptance. By acknowledging your thoughts without judgment, you create a space for change. The practice of self-observation is fundamental to this process. By observing your thoughts and emotions, you begin to realize that they don't define who you are. This realization is liberating, as it allows you to distance yourself from the narratives that keep you stuck. Personal transformation doesn't happen overnight, but is a continuous process of growth and discovery. As you become more aware of yourself, you begin to make choices that are in line with your true essence. This journey of self-discovery is full of challenges, but also profound rewards. You discover that true freedom comes from within, and that life is an opportunity to explore and express your authenticity. How to recover the purity of childhood in your adult mind. Before the internal dialogue was established, there was a purity of being that we all experience in early childhood. It's a state of total presence, where reality is experienced directly, without the constant filter of thoughts. Observe a very young child. They exist in a state of natural wonder, completely immersed in the present moment, without the need for an internal commentator narrating their experience. This is our original state of being. As we grow up, we begin to develop what psychologists call a narrative voice, a tool that should serve us but ends up dominating us. Compulsive thinking is an adaptation, not our fundamental nature. It's like a cloud covering the sun. The sun has always been there, shining. When the internal dialogue ceases, we are not reaching a new state, but returning to our natural state of clarity and presence. It's an awakening to something we've never really lost, only forgotten under layers of conditioned thoughts. The transformation you seek isn't in more thoughts, it's in the silence between them. As we saw in this video, when you stop talking to yourself, something magical happens. You finally wake up to who you really are. The change isn't gradual, it happens the very moment you decide to stop the internal dialogue. If this message resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell. Together, we can awaken to a reality beyond words, where true power resides.